As New Mexicans, food is a part of our culture, our ways of life, our languages, our connections to the land and water, and also the way in which we care for each other. It is the most basic thing to our humanity and to our culture. And in 2020, when New Mexico faced the shutdown from the pandemic, our nascent food and ag community had just begun to have the conversation of how do we address the repatriation or rematriation of our food system back to New Mexico to feed our people who are overwhelmingly facing food insecurity. Because strangely, we are a state with a rich agricultural and food tradition and love growing food and putting food on our families' tables, but yet we export over 90% of our produce while our people are literally the hungriest people in the United States. And so we set out to try to answer how do we solve that challenge for our communities. And when the pandemic hit in the spring of 2020, we didn't know what we were gonna do. And at that time, it was before we figured out how to use Zoom. And I remember in the early days, we were on these crazy calls with hundreds of people. I think some of these calls had 400 people on them. And if you remember these group calls, if you unmuted, it would echo for, minutes. And we had food pantries and producers from all over the state on this call. And it was an absolute crisis, especially in our tribal communities, which had lockdown procedures to protect elders and families. And I remember this one specific call when there was a woman from the Northern Navajo Nation chapter or agency up in Farmington, unmuted, and it echoed for a couple of minutes. And she said, "We're having trouble getting food up here." And a farmer from the South Valley in Albuquerque unmuted from the Agricultura network and said, "We have food." And within a few days, a flatbed with thousands of pounds of pinto beans and farm goods was shipped up to Farmington. And even though it's just such a small act, it was so representative of what we created this network to do, was to reconnect our farmers, our agricultural producers, and the people of this state so that we could feed our people. And to think that we have come from that in the spring of 2020 to 5 years later to having the very first food and agricultural summit statewide here hosted at this beautiful Pueblo Cultural Center, to think that we now have a formal governor-led initiative to address hunger, to think that we have passed the most forward-leaning anti-child hunger legislation in the United States, to think of everything that we've accomplished in the last 5 years is extraordinary. And I think it speaks to the heart of who we are as New Mexicans. So let me just say this. As a member of Congress in these dark and strange and bizarre and frightening times, I am on the front lines every single day with a front row seat to what Congress and the current administration is trying to do. And I know this is a celebration and a joyful moment, but we also have to be real about the moment that we face. And that is that right now, the administration has already cut millions of dollars in locally purchased food, has already cut millions of dollars in funding that goes to our food banks, has already cut millions of dollars in funding that goes to our SNAP beneficiaries. But they are currently trying to put through Congress the largest cut in food assistance programs and healthcare in the history of this country. And they want to pay for tax breaks for billionaires on the backs and suffering of our people.
Kill that big bad bill.
So it is our job to stop them. That is our job. And I can tell you that the food banks and people who are on the front lines have been knocking down the doors in Washington. We have been working and meeting every single week with the governor to talk about how we as a state will keep our people whole. And I can tell you that even though we are facing dark times, we will do exactly like we did on that call in April of 2020. Even in the wilderness and in the darkness and the chaos of the moment that we face, we will find a way to feed our people. because we are New Mexicans, because we care for our people, because we fight for our people, because we believe in our people, and we will do everything that it takes to make sure that our people are okay.